and welcome back to another edition. I have my AirPod in still. To another edition of Beyond the Endzone. What a week we have in front of us. Obviously, we know that Ole Miss will be in the college football playoffs, and they will start that journey Saturday against Tulane. We'll have a breakdown of the game, preview it all, hear from Coach Golding about the team and what he's expecting to see out there. Man, I'm loving what I'm hearing from Pete Golding, by the way, so far in his short stint as head coach. Just love the energy, just a different guy than the last guy that was in that position at Ole Miss. But we'll talk about that game. We've been previewing it for the last few weeks, but we're just days away now. And then obviously we still got some other bowl games. Obviously Southern Miss, they'll be taking on Western Kentucky. We'll talk about that game, which is for next week on the 23rd. And then Mississippi State, they get their bowl game. They actually make a bowl game. One of the teams that didn't meet that 6-6 threshold still gets a bowl game, and they take on Wake Forest. That's a January 2nd at the turn of the new year. So we'll talk about that. And then your New Orleans Saints, a winning streak? What? Favorites? Yes, that's right. We'll talk about that game against the Jets coming up on Sunday. But let's get right into it. It's time. It's time. It's college football playoff time. I was up there in Oxford this Monday, and honestly last week as well. But this Monday specifically, I get out there, get into the community, get on that campus. You hear the coaches and players talking. You can feel it. You can feel the buzz. It's special. Obviously, Ole Miss's first ever college football playoff appearance after their first ever 11-win regular season. A lot of conversations around this team. Y'all have heard me talk about it here and on air. I understand where a lot of the frustration comes for Ole Miss fans when we talk about this team. We're not even really talking about this team sometimes. We're talking about everything surrounding this team. Right now, it doesn't matter. That stuff doesn't matter. All that matters is what's going to happen on the gridiron, and they have a rematch against Tulane from earlier this year. Now, I'm, this is an interesting one, right? I don't know if y'all remember, but Ole Miss really dominated that game. We've talked about it for the last, few weeks as well. That game was, a long time ago, though, 45-10 win for Ole Miss. But this is a different team, right? This Tulane team is a different team, but so is Ole Miss. That's the conversation that everyone's having, and I get it. I'm going to kind of break down my thoughts on the playoffs in general as we get through with this Ole Miss preview. But what a game this is going to shape out to be for Ole Miss, specifically because you got some film against this team. But the question is, right, I just said it. I know everyone is favoring Ole Miss big time. They're 17.5-point favorites, rightfully so. But this Tulane team is playing their best ball of late. Both of these teams are coming into this game with 5-game winning streaks. Obviously, Tulane, they got that extra game playing in the American Conference Championship and beating a very good North Texas team. Their quarterback for North Texas, what a story he's had. He's actually going to hit the portal. But this Tulane team, they're playing their best ball, and what they do really special, right? I'm gonna kind of talk about Tulane real quick, and then we'll get right into the Ole Miss conversation. Tulane, they take the ball away and they run the ball well when their offense is in rhythm, right? Their quarterback, he can do it all. He can throw, he can pass. Retzloff, really good player. But if you remember back then in that first game, the Ole Miss defense, that was a question mark for a little bit in the season. Coming into it specifically was, is Ole Miss's defense going to be able to live up to what they had last season? Last year was one of, if not, I think it's technically, statistically, the best defense Ole Miss has ever had. Could they live up to that this season? That was a conversation in the offseason. The secondary, it's not the same. Obviously, you lose a lot of talent in that front seven. But in that game, we saw Ole Miss really, bring it defensively. And that was that first sign of, hey, the defense, it can hold its own, right? Obviously, we know what this offense can do and has done this season, especially since Trinidad Chambliss has come into that role, and what a story he is. I mean, I think if you're watching every week, you understand how I think about Trinidad Chambliss, and not just the athlete, not just the stats and skills. I mean, he's just I love his personality, and he's so mature, and it feels like he's built for this moment. And if you don't remember, he was in Ferris State last season, started that season. He was there for the first 3 years of his career. Let me just backtrack a little bit even more. In Ferris State for 3 years, played a little bit in his sophomore season due to injury. And then last season he comes in and has an unbelievable year. Look up the stats. They're insane. 3,000 passing yard season, over 1,000-yard rusher, and Pete and Joe Judge, they talked about it in pressers this week about, how did you even come across this guy? And, Joe Judge says they spotted the film and then they watched him and they said, hey, can he fit into our scheme? Can he fit into what we had to offer? Because you can see if you watch his highlights back at Ferris State, the athleticism jumps off the page. I mean, it jumps off the film. It's unbelievable what he was able to do last year. I was able to kind of go back and watch that Ferris State game in the championship game when they won. And man, he was special. I mean, they dominated that game, won easily. And, they saw that film and they said, hey, could he fit into this system? And then obviously coming to the season, Austin Simmons, a lot of hype around him. He was at SEC Media Days. And I don't know if y'all remember, once again, going to talk about the past a little bit. I mean, I was very high on Austin Simmons. I still am. I still think he can be a very good player just because of the tools physically he has. But what Trinidad Chambliss has done is so special. But let's talk about this Ole Miss team, what they've done so well, specifically offensively, right? And I understand the Kiffin departure. Is the offense going to look the same? Well, they got the staff back, right? The staff is here. Charlie Weiss is back at offensive coordinator for this playoff run. So I get the concerns. It makes sense. Not saying it's not nothing, especially from a game planning standpoint. I've talked about how, I think Lane Kiffin's one of the best game planners in college football, but you got the staff back defensively and offensively. Joe Judge is still in place, right? I don't think the offense is going to have that much of a step back. I'm going to be completely honest, and from what I'm hearing from Pete Golding, he is very, very, very smart when it comes to football. I mean, I could sit and listen to him talk about defense and offense for an hour. It feels like just when he breaks it down, I just love that kind of stuff. And so I don't see any kind of step back or anything like that, but you can't come into this game sleepwalking, right? You cannot do that against a Tulane team that, everyone's doubting. Everyone's doubting this Tulane team. Obviously James Madison as well, another group of 5 team, group of 6, however you want to look at it. But a lot of doubt. That's going to put a lot of fire into this team. So, Ole Miss coming into this game, 2:30 kickoff. That's really good, but it's in Oxford, right? It's the biggest sporting event in Mississippi history, in my opinion. I think we're going to see the economic impact is going to prove that to be true. I've seen some numbers thrown out there in the $70 million range. I haven't validated that, but I've seen that out there, which is just insane, right? That's just going to be such a magical moment up there in Oxford. And obviously we'll be out there to bring you all the coverage out there on Saturday. But that's the thing, right? You got to come in ready. And this was something that Pete Golden had to say. And I really liked it when they asked him about this team and, what has he noticed from this team and what he likes the most. And I think this is a perfect representation of what this team is. And I think Ole Miss fans would agree. When you hear this, you're going to say, yeah, that's what you see on the field. That's what they do every week. It's just that grit. That's kind of a little bit of a foreshadow. But let's go ahead and hear Pete Golden, what he had to say.
I think the grit. I think the toughness. I think they've got amnesia. I think it's a next play mentality, and it has been for a long time. I think they're very even kill. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. At the end of the day, they just want to be coached really hard. They want to have good plans on both sides of the ball. Energy and effort have never been an issue with this group. I think we've got older guys in critical leadership roles. And I think a lot of times when your best players are your best people and your best leaders, it becomes player-led. So these guys just want to spot the ball. They want to have good plans. They know this Tulane team's not the same Tulane team we played in week 4. They're well aware of that, and neither are we. And so we got to have a really good week of practice and great preparation and be the most excited to play. So probably their grit for me.
And I completely agree. I've talked about that as well. We talked about coming into the season as well. It's supposed to be a down year, right? It's supposed to be a rebuild year for Ole Miss. They don't believe that. They haven't believed that from the beginning. And you see that on the field, best regular season in Ole Miss history, right? So all the conversations, we've had it a lot about this Ole Miss team, even before the season, obviously in the middle of the season, and now we're into the conversation about the playoffs. They don't buy into any of that. This is a very mature team, a very gritty team, a tough team, and they believe. So, Ole Miss fans, all the conversation, though, even me talking right now, it doesn't matter. What's going to matter is what's going to happen on the field. And I just cannot wait to see the crowd out there, the environment, the play on the field. So, biggest takeaways for me in this game, Ole Miss is going to have their offense is not going to have a problem. I think that they're going to be completely fine offensively here, and defensively, you got to be able to stop Retzloff when it comes to his running ability as well. He's a very good runner. His stats just prove that when you look at him. He's their leading rusher, obviously, and passer. So, that's the biggest thing here. Can they contain Retzloff? That was something Pete Golden said even, in the first matchup coming into it. He spoke to media and was talking about how this quarterback's really good, y'all. This is a really good quarterback for Tulane. Obviously, John Summerall, he did take the job out there in Florida, but he will be coaching this team throughout the playoffs. So they got their commanding officer, even though he is going to depart after this season. So, Tulane, they're going to have – they're going to want to prove something in this game, right? I think Ole Miss is just going to be a little too much in this one. Obviously, once we get into game picks, I'll give y'all even a deeper breakdown on that. But let's move on. We got some other big-time matchups when it comes to bowl games. Obviously, Southern Miss grad, it was tough to see the ending of the season, but they still do make the playoffs. The Southern Miss Golden Eagles will take on Western Kentucky. Obviously, that fall-off, excuse me, at the end of this season, it was not fun to watch. Obviously, you lose your last 3 games. You going into that 3-game stretch at the end of the year, you had the opportunity to secure your spot in the Sun Belt Championship. Just a tough fall off at the end of the year. We kind of talked about it, right? All year, the defense for Southern Miss, it was very opportunistic. They were leading the country at one point earlier in the year when it comes to turnovers. Very opportunistic defense, but when you play these really good offenses in the Sun Belt, they couldn't really contain him. And obviously, Braylon Braxton, you see him on the screen right there, did suffer an injury later in the year, kind of put the offense a little back, especially in that Texas State game. Weren't able to do much offensively, only scoring 14 points. South Alabama, that's the point I'm trying to make here. 41 points against Texas State, 42 points against South Alabama, and then another 28 to Troy. And that game was, for all the marbles, right? That game was to punch a ticket into the Sun Belt Championship, and they couldn't quite do much or enough, and they lose by 10 in that game. So for this matchup, Western Kentucky is favored. It's not going to be included in our game picks since it is next week. I will give my opinion right now on this one. Very interesting situation, right? Charles Huff, he's leaving. He's going to Memphis. Blake Anderson steps into the role as head coach at Southern Miss. I love the hire. A proven winner, at Arkansas State, at Utah State. He's a very good coach. And I understand in this era of coaches moving around and there's all kinds of names, you get to a point in the season where I think this is the best move. You keep a guy that's in-house. They built this, the foundation. They talked about that in his introductory press conference on Monday. The foundation has been rebuilt at Southern Miss. So I don't see some kind of crazy fall off here when it comes to Southern Miss. And speaking of Southern Miss, former head coach out there, Will Hall, he's actually going to be the next coach out there at Tulane once John Summerall leaves. Crazy parallels there, I guess. I was actually at Southern Miss when Will Hall was there. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, very interesting game. We've seen Western Kentucky this season. They can put points on the board. A pretty good season, 8-4 on the year. So they have one more win in Southern Miss. But this is what Blake Anderson had to say on Monday when it comes to his team in this game. They're focused. This is not about him. I know Monday was about introducing him as the next guy, but he really wanted to make sure everyone understood that it's not about me. It's about this team and finishing this season, best season for Southern Miss in a minute.
Considering the circumstances, my focus is to help this senior class and this group find a way to win number 8. That's it. I'm not the focal point in any way. I'm the bus driver trying to get them to the game and allow them to be who they are. They did the work this year. I do not want to be by any means take a distraction or take away from what they have the ability to finish. And I've told them very clearly, this is your game. You're going to get out of it what you want.
Very well said, and I completely agree. Love to see that they're focused on this season with the calendar how it is. It's easy to look ahead and talk about 2026 and the team and the players and the staff and all that stuff, but we can't forget it, right? I get the calendar is a mess right now when it comes to coaches and players leaving, but I love to hear that from the new head coach out there at Southern Miss. Obviously, we will bring you coverage in that game on the 23rd, which is Tuesday next week, out there in the New Orleans Bowl. So also Mississippi State, they'll be playing in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I know, right? What a game this is. They're playing an 8-4 Wake Forest team. Obviously, the winner. Hopefully, we get to see Jeff Levy getting that Mayo bath at the end of the game. One of the most interesting celebrations in bowl game history, in my opinion. My friend Carson is not a big fan of Mayo, so he gets real excited when we see the Mayo bath. But no, this is an interesting game, obviously, for Mississippi State. Didn't know if they would even get a bowl game due to opt-outs like a Notre Dame, Iowa State, Kansas State, due to Iowa State and Kansas State losing their coaches, and then obviously Notre Dame didn't make the playoffs, so they just said no, we're not doing it. So so they get a bid into the bowl game and the Duke's Mayo Bowl on January 2nd. Interesting matchup though. You see the records, 8-4 Wake Forest versus a 5-7 Mississippi State. You'd say, oh, okay, Mississippi State, yeah, well, hey, they got a bowl game, but hey, guess what? They're actually favored in this game, and I think that's actually correct. I haven't watched a lot of Wake Forest, so when I heard about this matchup, I kind of tuned into them, tried to check out who they were and what they do well. They run the ball very well. They got a guy in Claiborne that is a very good running back. He's almost got 1,000 yards on the season. So Mississippi State, we've seen the defense bend but don't break. Stopping the running game, it's been kind of an issue. We saw what happened against Missouri when Hardy had his game against the Bulldogs. So that's a concern for me. You got to be able to stop the run in this game. But these close matchups that Mississippi State had in this one or this season, excuse me, I think that's that matters in the SEC as well. We saw how down the ACC was this season. So Mississippi State, while they didn't get to that 6-win mark, they had a lot of great games. I mean, I hate to live in the past, but there was multiple games they had a shot to win. So very interesting matchup. Just wanted to preview that a little bit. Once we get closer to the matchup, we'll hear from Coach Levy and players, and we'll obviously bring you all that coverage once we get it. But let's go ahead and move on. We only got a little bit more time here, but let's talk about our New Orleans Saints. My Saints fans, what? 2-game winning streak? Are you serious? Yes, first winning streak of the season for the New Orleans Saints, obviously beating back-to-back weeks at the time. Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the NFC South leaders. They beat them. Carolina jumps into that spot, especially after Tampa Bay lost on Thursday night. Guess what? The Saints go out there and beat the Panthers last week. And that guy right there throwing the football, Saints fans, I think we got a guy. I think you got a guy in Tyler Shuck. Bailey has been unbelievable. But now they get ready for a matchup against the Jets. I think this is one of the first times in a very long time the Saints have been favored in a football game. And it's kind of, you're seeing it, just what you're seeing from this team recently. And it all revolves around Tyler Shuck. I mean, I don't want to discount what the defense has done. The defense has been special these last few weeks. But, Tyler Shuck is really coming into his own. And I know he gets a lot of criticism for his age and, being a 26-year-old rookie and stuff. But there's a maturity there. And when the ball comes out of his hands, there's conviction with it, and he is just, very confident. I really love his confidence. So, I was talking about Rattler in the beginning of the year. Composure was my favorite thing from him, but the confidence I see from Tyler Shuck in every single throw has been very special. Obviously, Saints are dealing with some injuries heading into this game. When we talk about the Kamara is out. Devin Neal, I believe, is out. I saw that today. So you have to have Estime step up in that running back room. A guy that's been getting a little bit more touches since Kamara went out. So very interesting matchup. Very excited to see if the Saints can get their first 3-game winning streak of the season. That 5.5 win total at the beginning of the year was not looking promising a couple weeks ago, but now it's very possible with Jets, Titans, and then you close out the season with a division opponent. So it's right in front of them. They could actually get to about even 7 wins, which would be obviously an improvement from last year. But this is what head coach Kellen Moore and Tyler Shuck had to say ahead of the matchup.
That shows up in games. You do your best to simulate those things in practice, but ultimately the circumstances of end of game drives, 2-minute drives, end of game drives to go take the lead. Those things obviously are best performed, they're best evaluated in the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a credit to Kellen and us and all the staff of just providing some of those scenarios where, at the time you're like, oh man, this may not come up, or we're watching just football fundamentals throughout the week of different teams, and it shows up every single week, and you got to be prepared for it.
And obviously I didn't lead into that sound the best, but that was kind of them talking about that their progression and, being prepared for all these situations that they're seeing now. Tyler Shuck, he's all his data he's taken in, not just for this season, but for his career. So what a scene for the Saints. Is crazy. They're 4-10. It doesn't feel like a 4-10 team right now after 2 straight wins. So who dat for my Saints fans out there. Hopefully they can keep their winning ways going and beat a Jets team that they have a better record than. But let's keep this thing rolling. Obviously, we got to talk about these games, and it's time. Let's do some game picks. It is championship week. Not championship week. First round games, college football playoffs. Had that wrong in my script over here. College football playoff, first round matchups. Obviously, we get started on Friday. Alabama taking on Oklahoma. Alabama, they were they lost to this team earlier in the year, and we haven't seen them playing their best ball at all at the end of the year. Obviously, that Georgia game in the SEC championship was not their best showing by any means. Georgia is looking very, very impressive right now. I really like what I see from Oklahoma. This line's been moving a lot. Bama was favored, but now Oklahoma's kind of jumped into that favored role. Defense for Oklahoma, I love it. And this matchup is so interesting for me because if these two teams get hot, man, I wouldn't want to play them, man. If they play their best ball like we've seen at parts of this season, obviously Bama earlier in the year, as well as Oklahoma, if Oklahoma can get their offense rolling like it was when Mateer was a Heisman favorite, man, I wouldn't want to play that defense for Oklahoma. For me, very, very tough game to pick. It's kind of a toss-up, If Bama can get their run game going, I think Bama could win, but can they run the ball against this elite defense for Oklahoma? I don't know, so I've been really back and forth on this one. Hard to beat a team twice, but with it being out there in Norman for Oklahoma, home game, first time in the playoffs of hosting a home game, at least, I think that is going to be the factor in this one. Very, very close game, low scoring game as well. I think the defenses are going to show up in this one. Don't think the offenses are going to be, flying around. So give me Oklahoma, very, very close game. That's such a tough game to pick. Very tough game. All right, let's move on to Saturday now, the morning kickoff. Texas A&M taking on Miami. Obviously, Miami, Notre Dame, that was a conversation. I think for the situation the committee was in, they got this one right. Head-to-head has to matter. Miami was playing their best ball of the season late. Did have two really tough losses. Obviously, A&M losing to Texas in the last week of the regular season, rivalry week against Texas. I mean, A&M was so good all year. It's hard for me to think that, they're just not good anymore. Even though I did pick Texas to beat Texas A&M, I was kind of my, SEC is not going to have an undefeated team. I kind of want to hold on to that. And I guess I was right. But, I just, as much as I've liked Miami, there was points in the season I thought Miami was the best team in the country. I have a hard time thinking out there in College Station in that environment, that Miami will be able to beat this team. I just really like A&M in this one. Another great game, though. These first two matchups are going to be incredible games. Let's move on. I don't have to take too much time on this one. Obviously, we broke down Ole Miss, Tulane. I think Ole Miss's offense is going to be a little too much in this one for Tulane. 17.5-point favorites in this one. 56.5 over under. I think that's probably right. I think we're going to see the offenses kind of flying around early, but then I think Ole Miss is going to, lock in on defense. I think Golden's going to be very well prepared in this one defensively. So Ole Miss, they're going to have too much offensively for Tulane to keep up. Ole Miss gets the big win and covers that 17.5. Oregon, James Madison. Yeah. Sorry, James Madison. As much as I want to root for y'all, a lot of wins this season, only one loss, but it was against Louisville. It's like, and that's like their one group power 4 game this season. I can't see Oregon losing this game. I think Oregon wins big here. Could be competitive early, but I got Oregon winning big in this one. All right, let's move on to Rams Seahawks tonight, Thursday night football. What a matchup this is for the NFC West division. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. Obviously, weather is going to play a factor in this one. Yesterday, I've seen crazy wind in Seattle and Washington. So interesting piece of the puzzle in this one. I just love what I'm seeing from the Rams right now. Seahawks, I love their defense, but obviously Devontae being out of this game for the Rams is a big piece. But I love what I'm seeing from the Rams right now. I think they're the best team in the NFC. So give me the Rams in this one. They're going to get the big win on Thursday night and take the lead in their division. Well, let's wrap up with our New Orleans Saints. Yes, we are favored, 5.5-point favorites in this one. I never thought we would get into this point of the season where, hey, we could get 3 straight wins here. And I think it's very, very likely. I think the Saints are riding hot right now. Jets are the opposite right now. Saints get a big win here, in my opinion. Low scoring. I think we could see a low scoring one early. Saints going to find enough points late, though, to get the big win. But that's all for right now. What a week we have in store for us. Obviously, tune in to the 4 p.m. show that's about to start on WLBT. You can stay right here to watch that broadcast. And then obviously this weekend, we will bring you everything from Oxford as the Ole Miss Rebels try to continue their dream season as they try to chase a national championship. But in their way is the Tulane Green Wave. Got to handle business first. But once again, I'm Nathan Lee. This has been Beyond the End Zone. I hope y'all have an incredible rest of y'all's day. And obviously tune in this weekend to see if the Ole Miss Rebels could take down the Green Wave. Thank you.